Okay, Idrisil isn't as pointy as some of us thought it might be, but I still love the way that it's designed in the most recent chapter. Um, but I'm not going to be talking about Idrisil today, or at least not directly anyway. So I'm going to set this aside because I don't want to break it. I am actually going to talk about Loki and Lola. But before I do that, I do want to mention I did watch the One Piece fan letter little special thing that Megumi Ishitani did, and I love it. I love what she did. It was amazing. It was wonderful. I love all of it. All the little straw hats have like all the straw hats have like cameos throughout the whole episode and everything else like that. Some of them interact and everything else like that. And the little girl meets Usopp and we see the Marines and everything else like that. And I love all of that. That was so good. I love how they did that. That was great. Um, I'm sure other people will do much better breakdowns of the video than I ever of the episode than I ever could. But I loved how they did it. But into this, so I was thinking about this yesterday, and there was something that flitted through my mind. And I don't remember exactly how the topic flitted through my mind or whatever, but what happened was the thought that occurred to me was like, what if Loki wanted to marry one of Big Mom's daughters, or at least make an alliance with Big Mom, because he has grown up hearing about how strong she was as a child and wants to make some type of, an alliance with that power. So, or like some connection of that. And so it's like all of this, it's like the little bit that we knew before last chapter about Loki was that, okay, he was the Prince of Elbath. Okay. He was a giant. Okay. He had been in love with Lola and he wanted to marry her. And she didn't want to marry him and she left. They tried to pass Chiffon off as Lola. That did not work. That made the giants even angrier at Big Mom than they already were for everything else that happened. And it seemed to make Loki sad in the whole overarching, section about Lola. To be fair, the bits that we hear about Loki in that sense are coming from Chiffon telling Nami about it, and Chiffon may not know everything that was going on. But that's going to be something that's taken into consideration in this bit of a, not necessarily a theory here, but at least topic that I want to bring up here. So, some of the things that I wanted to get pointed out. So, first of all, in regards to Loki overall, for lots of people keep pointing this out, it's like, okay, so there's kind of obviously a couple of ways that this can go for what's going to happen with Loki throughout the arc. We're probably going to end up getting a backstory with Loki where we get more of a flashback with him, where we see what actually happened with him and Lola from his perspective, as opposed to just like kind of second-hand-ish knowledge from Chiffon to Nami. Not that I'm saying Chiffon is wrong, I'm just saying she's kind of more like a second, third-hand knowledge of what was going on. From like maybe Lola telling her what happened, and that now Chiffon is telling Nami and everything. And and Chiffon told Nami during Whole Cake Island and everything. So there's that whole concept there. So there's, we'll definitely get like a flashback with Loki and everything else like that. He's technically already been involved in Big Mom's flashback and is part of Lola's backstory, but he hasn't fully gotten his own backstory yet. And we're definitely going to get that at some point in time in this arc. Either very soon or much further on down the line in the arc, depending on when Oda thinks it's the best time to drop this to explain why Loki is the way that he is. So there's lots of concepts going on right now about like whether or not Loki is going to end up being the big bad of the arc, the big bad villain that, Luffy is going to have to defeat, and the Straw Hats are going to have to fight against Loki and anyone who's loyal to him and everything else like that. Like, they're going to have to fight against him with the rest of the good giants and Hirudin and, Dory and Bragi and everything else like that. Like, is that what's going to be what happens? Or is it going to be something where it's like Loki actually is a good guy, but because of things that have been twisted and accused upon him, that he is, has been, just all information about him has just been twisted? Or is this going to be like where it's, he's gone cuckoo because of a broken heart, because of Lola? Is that one of the things that might happen here? Or is it going to be something else entirely where he honestly is just the bad guy, or where he's just been manipulated, or where he's just been accused of being the bad guy for so long that he just decides to, fine, you want me to be the bad guy? I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the big bad thing that's going to destroy Elbath. This is what everybody thinks I am, so I might as well just be it. Type of a thing. So that's like those possibilities there. Kind of, vague, over the top, overall overarching possibilities. And it could just end up being that, no, Loki's not actually bad. We get this backstory where it's revealed that he's just been manipulated, or where someone has been, making him take the blame for stuff all for so long and everything like that. And he's actually a nice guy, and he's actually trying to save Elbath and everything else like that. And it's this huge misunderstanding where he didn't actually kill his father and take the devil fruit, or maybe he, did take the devil fruit, but someone else killed his father, and he took the devil fruit to keep it away from whoever else was trying to get the devil fruit. All of that stuff is kind of being taken into consideration right now with all the different theories floating around out there. So I'm not necessarily going to hit on those at the moment. What I did want to go into is in regards to how kind of Big Mom fits into this situation. Because obviously part of Loki's childhood and his own backstory fits into Big Mom, because the whole event that happened when she was on Elbath happened during the winter solstice, the sun god fasting festival that they do right after Loki was born, and after Road and Goldberg too, obviously, but specifically after Loki was born. And as I mentioned in the chapter review, a lot of the times in countries, if like a prince is born, or if like a prince or a princess is born, and then either something horrible happens in the country, it's seen as, oh, this is a bad omen for this child, or, oh, this wedding happened and then this horrible thing befell the kingdom, or whatever the case may be. Stuff like that happens all over the world. And, like, it's blamed on stuff, or if a good thing happens, and it's like, oh, that's a good sign for this rain. Like, oh, there was a comet in the sky, and it was a blessing upon, the reign of this new ruler, or whatever, or the birth of this child, or whatever. Or, there's a star in the sky above Jerusalem for, biblical people, for, the going into theology and everything else like that. And, like, lots of different, myths and legends and everything else like that have, like, different, things that are, like, a harbinger of a good thing or a bad thing that is going to either bless or befall this child or this kingdom and everything else like that. And the way that it is talked about here is that, Loki is this accursed prince, and that he is the shame of Elbath, and that he's been imprisoned, and he's like crucified to the tree. By the way, I was looking at the picture, and you don't actually see Loki's hands in the picture. They're kind of covered by the angle that his like boots are at for where his feet are. But we might get another angle, and we might actually see either like nails in his hands pinning him to the tree, or it's just his hands are just like stuck to the tree because of all of the giant chains that are around him that are most likely sea prism stone, in all honesty. And there's the whole other question of like, is Luffy going to free Loki? And I'm like, I'm not even going to touch that right now. Other people can deal with that question. Other people can consider that right now. I'm going to think about other things. So Loki has like all this stuff that is just like, it's very much being like pushed upon him, from everything that we've heard so far, from what Oimo and Kashi and what the rest of the giants on the Giant Warrior pirate ship right now are telling, Robin and her group and everything. And from the little bit that we heard, Gerd and Goldberg discussing, Rhodes much more of a shame of Elbath than Loki ever was, and everything else like that. So we'll see how that plays into things. And then, of course, Loki is like proclaiming himself to be the sun god. And, he claims that he will be the one to end the world. And I mean, as I mentioned in the in the chapter video, based on the little bits of Norse mythology that's in here, that Loki is kind of sometimes part of the reason that Ragnarok ensues, because he ends up getting one of the other gods in Norse mythology tricked, so that way they kill Balder, who is this beautiful god, and his death is supposed to signify like the beginning of Ragnarok. And then you throw in the fact that Loki's son Fenrir is, it got very windy outside right now. Where Loki's son Fenrir, who is this giant wolf, is supposed to be the one to like devour the sun and everything else like that. So there's like connections there anyway between like Loki and the sun god and the sun and everything else like that. And so there's lots of that stuff going on. But kind of where this starts is that for Loki, the year that he's born, and like just a couple of months after he's born, is when everything happens with Linlin on the island when she's a child, and the big Semla incident happens, and she kills one of their elders, and she is she just destroys like a whole town. And then that forces the Sheep's House, which had been there for like a good chunk of time, makes them have to leave. Makes Mother Carmel and the children have to leave. And then Loki would, possibly have like some of that blame, like, this happened just after the prince was born and in a celebration of him. So maybe that's not a good sign. But maybe that might have been like, it was a coincidence. It's fine. We'll just shove that off to the side. But Loki may have grown up hearing stories and whispers about this Linlin, this Charlotte Linlin, this pink-haired girl, this human girl that defeated one of our elders and destroyed a town, all in the verge of looking for food, because of the solstice, and she was hungry and from fasting and everything else like that, and all this other stuff. So it's just like there's all of that concept there, and then there's like he grows up with that, and then because like the Sheep's House leave, and then like so many years later, because Linlin's like 5 going on 6 when everything happens, because she's currently 68 years old, or at least she's 68 years old, unless we know that she's dead, which we don't know about that yet. But one of the things is he would have grown up kind of maybe hearing whispers about that at time. Like maybe it's like the tale told around like the campfire to like children to get them behave. Like she's like the boogeyman of Elbath or something like that. Like there's a human girl out there, blah, 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 blah. And then because Elbath isn't like 100% closed off from the outside world the way that Wano is. It's a lot more closed off than a lot of the other nations are. Just because, the giants are so strong, and like they it's fairly limited for who's allowed in, and and everything else like that. Because like the whole thing that I pointed out was like, Mother Carmel had to like trick her way into getting into Elbath in the first place. So I went over that, where she just had to like trick her way in there, basically manipulate her way in there, to be able to set up her Sheep's House and everything, her orphanage for selling children. So that's what happened. So that's kind of that there. But like, we know that the giants at least get information from the outside world. They still get like the newspapers every now and then, and the giants have ships that sail about and everything, and they get information and stuff like that. They either hear it from travelers, or they get the newspaper themselves, and either they have other humans that maybe live on Elbath help read them the newspaper or stuff like that. I wonder how big a newspaper would have to be, like if Morgans would invest in like, I need a giant printing press. Why? Because I want to sell papers to the giants that they can read. It'll be a fortune. It's like, yeah, probably. So there's that. And like, so they would have gotten information coming in, and maybe they got information when Linlin got her first bounty. And then later on, when she got, as her bounty would increase, they would get these, the bounty posters would show up in the newspapers, and they would like read about them. Like Gerd maybe read about them, or, heard about what was going on with the girl who used to be her friend. And like Hyrudine is part of the backstory as well in that regard. Because Hyrudine is 18 years old by the time that Loki is born, and, he's already being trained to become like a warrior of Elbath and everything. I'll get to Hyrudine a little bit more later, but presumably Loki would have like heard these tales and everything else like that about Linlin and other information that would have like seeped its way into Elbath. Like maybe they heard a bit about like her being on the Rocks pirates and her having her own crew, and then her building up like her own, country archipelago set up with Totland and being the queen there, and then eventually like her being a Yonko and everything else like that. So it's like that type of stuff may have like filtered into Elbath over the years, and they heard about it. And they're like, this can't be the same girl. And it's just like, but it is. It has to be the same girl. It's, she's got the pink hair and she's got, blah, 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 blah. And, all of that stuff. So it's just like all of that information would have like eventually like filtered into Elbath. And maybe Loki heard about it as he grew. And again, we don't know Loki's full size in comparison to like Hyrudine or to some of the other giants that we've seen. Although admittedly, he looks, for at least in comparison to the size and angle that we are given with Luffy, he looks like he's probably a lot bigger than some of the other giants, because he actually he just looks like he's bigger in that regard. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into, how much information would have gotten into Elbath and how much Loki would have been aware of. He was a prince. He was the prince of the country, so he probably got more information about the outside world than some of the other giants, just to keep himself and his father and himself and such like abreast of what was going on outside, informed of what was going on. And so maybe he heard all of that information, and then later on he decides maybe if he is going down the path of, this is just like in speculation, because somehow there had to be something where there was a meeting between Loki and Lola, and something happened there where like he saw her, because it is like said that like he fell in love with Lola at like first sight. It was like love at first sight for him, and he was so enamored with her, and despite everything that had happened with Linlin and everything else like that in the past, where there all of this hatred pointed at her from everything that happened among the giants and her and everything else like that, he proposed marriage to Lola. She turned him down, obviously, but like he proposed marriage to her. And I mean, like, since we don't know the full context of like were all the other giants happy, and the little bit of the flashback we see in the manga, like the other giants seem happy, but we don't know if that would be the full case, and these might have just been some of Loki's friends who were happy for him that he found a girl that he liked. And so there's all of that there. And, it's like the thought that I had was like, well, if we do want to go down this route of, okay, so there's two possible ways this could have gone. One, it is just Loki is actually like evil and conniving and everything else like that. And he was like, oh, I'm going to go and make an alliance, or make some type of an alliance with this woman that has been like this boogeyman that I have heard about my entire life, and I will prove my strength to the other giants by bringing her under heel and blah 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 blah. And like the thought that I had was like, maybe what happened was like, Linlin is like invited to, maybe not to Elbath itself probably, but like just some other like neutral territory island in the New World. Maybe Wiener Island, I don't know. But some other like neutral territory island that they could go to, where like the giants could get there easily and she could get there easily with some of her children. And maybe she's like, oh, well, we're going to want to have food and everything, because she's Linlin, and food has to be involved in everything. And, she wants to, that she brings several of her children along who are the most, who are the best chefs, and she brings Lola along, because Lola is this amazing, chocolatier and everything else like that, because she was the minister of chocolate on Cacao Island and everything. And, so maybe like Lola made this amazing dessert, and when the giants and, Loki and Big Mom are talking and eating, he like tastes the dessert and he's like, oh, this is wonderful. May I, I would like to meet the one who made this. And Big Mom is just kind of like, ideas forming in her head of a marriage. And then they bring out Lola, and, she's like, bring Lola, and, Lola comes out, and she's like, yes, I'm the one who made this, and, like, Loki just maybe falls in love with her there. And so there's like, all of that stuff. And then like she doesn't want to marry him because it's just more of an arranged marriage. And she wants to find someone who wants to marry her for her, even though he actually maybe wanted to marry her for who she was and reasons and blah, 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 blah. But now she's with Gotti. So other reasons there. And he is just, he's angry about this. She runs away and Big Mom and the others try to pass off Chiffon as Lola instead. And Loki does not like this. He is upset about this. This is where like the whole whatever bit of an alliance negotiations were happening just completely broke off and ended. And he was just like, no, when they left. And the Giants left. And there was probably some time between like the first meeting and this, and maybe there were a couple of other meetings or whatever for like discussions of things and everything. For conditions of this alliance and everything. And all of that. Now, thing I would like to point out, or kind of thing I would like to point out here. A, had Big Mom not tried to pass Chiffon off as Lola and simply said, okay, the daughter of mine that you wanted to marry, she ran away. I have another daughter who is her twin, and, they look almost exactly alike, and blah, 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 blah. Maybe there's this. And maybe Loki and the Giants wouldn't have been nearly as angry as they were. But the other thing that I point out is, like, if Loki really only wanted to have an alliance with Big Mom for her power, with the, that she'd made herself up into this amazing Yonko and everything else like that. She's like the most powerful woman in the world at that point in time. That if Loki had just wanted to have this alliance with her because of her power, then he really wouldn't have cared that Lola had ran away, or that they were switching Chiffon for Lola, or he could have just picked any of her daughters for him to marry that weren't already married and that were roughly within the right age range. So I don't think it's necessarily entirely that. I think he genuinely did have feelings for Lola. Whether or not those were, actual true love, because some of Oda's writing is kind of based on fairy tales, and, like this, love at first sight type of a thing, that, like, is kind of, shown here. And One Piece has done a little bit to that at times, but not too much, because like a lot of the other couples that I have discussed, and later on down the line, once we get more information about Loki and Lola, and we actually get like this full part of the backstory, I'll probably do another video where I talk about it. But I don't think for Loki it was him trying to necessarily gain power by marrying one of Big Mom's daughters. The other thought that I had was that, well, Loki's grown up hearing about this, this boogeyman under the bed in the form of, Charlotte Linlin his whole life. And maybe he's at the age where he wants to try to prove himself. Hyrule is older, and as I said, I'll get more to like the Loki and Hyrule in regards to how they're referred to in a little bit. But Hyrule is older. He's 18 years old by the time Loki is born. Hyrule has already kind of proven himself as a warrior, and maybe Loki has already proven himself as a warrior, but maybe he also wants to try to prove himself as a diplomat, possibly. Because in a lot of Norse mythology, Loki tended to be the one to work with, like, making deals between the gods and, the new gods and the old gods and the humans and the giants and everything else like that. And what may have happened was Loki decided to undertake this mission, or this task of trying to make an alliance, possibly, but at least try to fix some of the how can I phrase this? Not butting of heads, because it's not like Linlin was trying to go and fight the giants. It's not like that was the case, but it could have been that Loki wanted to try to prove that he could be this diplomat by going and trying to possibly make an alliance or something like that with Big Mom. And that could have very well been what was happening. That may have been his intention of like, oh, if I can make her an ally of ours, then this big scary monster that has been used to terrify children for so long, if I can prove that she is good, insert whatever form of good in whatever capacity you want to, or that she can be reasoned with or something, then that will prove that I know how to be a diplomat, that I can, take on bigger jobs, bigger assignments, bigger responsibilities in the kingdom. And all of that. Bear in mind, I did the math on this because Lola is 26 years old. And 5 years ago was when her and her crew land at Thriller Bark, because it's 3 years before, because 2 years ago was the time skip, and that's when they met, was before the time skip, and that's when everything happened on Thriller Bark with, like, the Thriller Bark arc with the Straw Hats showing up, and Lola and her crew had been on Thriller Bark for 3 years. So that's 5 years ago that they landed on Thriller Bark. So that would have been Lola is 21 when that happens. And we don't know the exact time frame that she left Totland, but we know just from the little bit of the picture that we see of, like, her talking to Pudding. Pudding still seems to be like a child, and Pudding is currently 16 years old. So, go back 5 years, Pudding would have been 11. And there would have had to have been, like, some time for Lola to leave Totland, find her crew, and then for them to go through Fishman Island and go into the Paradise side of the Grand Line. Now, to be fair, the Straw Hats did this in a fairly short amount of time overall. And also Lola grew up in a crew of pirates, so she kind of knows a good idea of, like, what she would need on a crew in regards to a navigator and a doctor and a cook and, stuff like that. And she built up her crew. And so it's like the oldest Lola would have been when she left would have been like 20 going on 21 by the time she left. And depending on stuff, she could have been anywhere between her late teens in regards to, like, she could have been like 17 like Luffy was when he left. She could have been 18, 19, something like that. So there's like this time frame in there, and that would have been put Loki in like his 50s. Mid to, early to mid 50s to a degree, because he's currently 63 years old, as I said. So it would have put Loki in like that time frame when he would have met Lola in the first place. And all of that. So he may have been like just like wanting to prove himself as a diplomat. And he thought that maybe, if I can, work with this, if I can do something in regards to Totland, then that might go well. And then it may have been something very similar where, like, he, met Lola and he fell in love with her and then he wanted to marry her, and Big Mom was all for it because then she would have been, like, try to use that to gain access to, like, the warriors of Elbaf and use them to help her expand her empire and to conquer all of the rest of the world, take out the other Yonko at the time, which Kaido would have been there and Whitebeard would have been the other one. Shanks may or may not have been a Yonko yet. That depends. May not have been, depending on the time frame. It would have been whoever the other Yonko was, Shiki, Wangju, whatever. And then, like, go and attack the world's government. And, that would have been, like, her concept for what she would have done. That would have been, like, her plan had this gone through. It doesn't. It still falls through. Loki is still heartbroken over the fact that Lola didn't want to marry him. They tried to pass Chiffon off as Lola. He noticed instantly. It's like, you're not the woman that I'm in love with. You're not the woman that I've been falling for. This is ridiculous. You guys tried to pull a fast one on us, and then they just leave. And it just makes things worse between Linlin and Elbaf. So those are kind of like the possibilities of what could happen there. What I wanted to point out in regards to, like, his childhood, in regards to, like, Loki's childhood, as I said, Loki is 63 years old. He is 18 years younger than Hyrule, because Hyrule is 81 years old, so he would have been 18 by the time Loki was born. The thing that I wanted to point out for how the Giants refer to Loki and Hyrule. Hyrule is just referred to as the son of the king. He's not referred to as a prince. He is not referred to as anything along those lines. He's just referred to as the son of the king. Loki is called the official child, and he's the one that holds the title of prince. Now, I'm basing this based off of the official translation, not the fan translation, which was something that I also like noticed in the fan translation, that like they use different ways of referring to Loki and Hyrule. And the reason I point this out is the same reason that I pointed it out in the review, is that lots of times kings all over the world, kings, emperors, czars, whatever, have the woman who is their queen, their main wife, and then they will sometimes either have secondary wives, or they will have concubines, or they will just have mistresses, depending on the circumstances. And depending on those circumstances, it would, if it's only... And, like, the best way to, like, do a simple comparison to this is, like, you look at Game of Thrones. And you look at the way that Ned Stark, yes, he raised Jon Snow. Jon Snow, to the vast majority of Westeros, is known as the bastard of, Jon Stark's, Ned Stark's bastard. And he is this illegitimate child. And then he has Robb, who is his true-born heir, his, firstborn, true-born child. And now, Ned doesn't necessarily treat Jon and Robb any differently, in that regard, but it could be something where Loki is the one that was born to the actual Queen of Elbath, whoever the Queen of Elbath was, whether she was, Odin's, true love, or whether she was a political marriage. I had the thought that maybe 65 years ago, there had been some incidents going on with, like, maybe some other giants that were causing problems, and maybe their leader, Odin, agreed to, like, marry the leader's daughter to, like, stop this big problem from happening, or try to, stop it before it got too bad. And then he married her, and then she became queen, and then they had Loki. And Hyrule could have just been a child who happened to be born out of wedlock between, King Harald and his, love. And they just may not have been married. Or some variant of that, or a dalliance, or something like that. One night stand type of a thing. We don't know the full context, but again, there is a difference in the way that they are referred to. And I don't know if there's as big of a difference in Japanese, because I don't know exactly how far that, like, between, like, an official child and just, like, you happen to be, like, a child that is, like, an illegitimate child type of a thing. Because I don't know exactly how that goes when it comes to Japan. I know sometimes there is a big difference there depending on stuff between, for, like, inheritances and stuff like that. I know that in Britain and in France, a lot of the times, like, the kings would have, many, many mistresses over the course of their reign, or even, while they were the prince or whatever. They would have many, many mistresses, and they would have many, many illegitimate children. Sometimes they would claim them, sometimes they would not. And sometimes they were more favored than, like, their actual, the children born to the queen, or sometimes the queen didn't end up having any children that survived, and the king, wanted to proclaim one of his own, one of his illegitimate children as his heir, but for reasons they could or couldn't do that. It's a whole big thing. And that could have been, like, something that's going on here, where it's like Loki is the legitimate heir, he is the official child of the king, and Hyrule just happens to be an illegitimate child of the king. Or at the very least, a child born out of wedlock who has not been, quote-unquote, made the proper prince. Or it could have been the deal with Loki's mother was that her child would become the prince. So there's, comparisons there, and it could just be revealed that, like, no, Hyrule is fully a legitimate child of the king. He is not, base-born. He is not a bastard. He is the legitimate child of the king and his first wife, and she died, and he remarried and then had Loki. And Hyrule just doesn't really go as the title of prince, because like that's never mentioned during Dressrosa or anything else like that. But again, that wasn't necessarily needed at the time. Even with Hyrule stating that he will, get the Marimar no Mi and use that to become the king of the giants, that could have been something where he wanted to use that power to then try to defeat Loki finally, so he could become the king of the giants, and everything. So it's like, yeah, and all of that falls into place where it's like, yeah, something happened where like, I had one of the other thoughts that I had was, in regards to Loki, because I had actually looked up in mythology, like, who's supposed to be Loki's mother. And in mythology, yes, in Marvel Comics, Loki is the adopted brother of Thor, the adopted son of Odin and Freya and everything. But in actual mythology, Loki is the son of, and I am going to mispronounce these names, I apologize, I am sorry, is the son of Farbanti, who is a Jotun or a giant, and Laufey, who is a goddess. So he's supposed to be half Jotun and half god. And kind of that's the way that he's kind of portrayed in Marvel as well. His father in Marvel is Laufey, who is the king of the frost giants. But in this case, Laufey is his mother. And with Loki, in Norse mythology, he is normally referred to as Loki Laufey's son of Laufey, instead of Laufey. Occasionally, but occasionally he is referred to as like the son of his father, as in like the son, Farbarata's son. Again, I'm butchering that. I apologize to anyone who actually understands how to say it. I apologize. Loki, is referred to as like the son of his mother, as opposed to like the son of his father, which is very different, because in a lot of those places it is like the male ancestry that is what is given in that regard. So like in my case, should like naming scheme follow this, my father's name is Craig, so I would be Amanda Craig's daughter, something along those lines would be, that type of a thing would be kind of the way that it is. It's kind of like Leif Erikson is Leif Erik's son. Is Leif Erik's son. So it's like, it's that naming scheme that the Norse do. Or it's like, I am the daughter of this, I am the son of this, that type of a thing. And like, I tried to see if I could find any more information about Loki's parents, and I really couldn't. I couldn't find that much about them. Was his mother the goddess of something specific, or was like, what else? I couldn't really find too much else about his father. Loki has like 2 brothers in it as well, in like Norse mythology. And then of course Loki has his wife, and then he has his children in mythology, which do get referenced in in Marvel, because like Fenrir is there in Marvel, and there is, Hela is, Hel is his daughter, and she is in charge of Niflheim, which is, like the underworld, or like the Norse version of hell and stuff like that. And, so there's like references to that in Marvel Comics that get brought up with Loki. And then there's the whole devil fruit situation where it comes to Loki, where so what we're told in the chapter is that Loki killed his father, King Harald, and took this devil fruit. I don't think it's ever 100% stated if he ate the devil fruit or if he just has the devil fruit. And the thought that I had for this, and obviously other people have had this same thought, is that did Loki take the devil fruit because someone else killed his father, and he took the devil fruit in order to prevent the other person from getting this devil fruit? Did Loki kill his father because King Harald was actually a horrible king, and he was, the Mad King or something like that, one of these horrible kings that has been throughout all of history where it's just like, well, we're going to overthrow the king. Why? Because he's freaking horrible. He keeps sending us to die in stupid battles and everything else like that. And he's cruel to us and overtaxes us and everything else like that. So it's like lots of that stuff. And it could have been like Harl was this horrible type of a king and we just haven't had that explained to us yet. And, Loki was like, I'm going to, end this now and, end you now. And then, and then I'll take this devil fruit and keep it somewhere safe so someone who wants to use it for bad reasons can't use it. And the thought that I had was, what if it's not a devil fruit where it's actually something that's like eaten and passed down through the line, as in like the king eats it, and then when he dies, the giants know how to make sure that the devil fruit stays on Elbath, and then they get the devil fruit back, and then like the new king eats it after his coronation, or the new ruler, if there's queens in the Elbathian line, we don't know. And then they eat it, and then when they die, similar thing happen. And that's a possibility. The other thought that I had was, what if it is something where it is like the devil fruit is inside of an object that is passed down from king to king, from ruler to ruler throughout Elbathian history. And I kind of had the thought of, what if it's something, because it's like, in all honesty, if a devil fruit if it's a devil fruit that is reincarnated inside any type of a fruit that is not legitimately from Elbath, like it's just like in like a regular sized banana, my mom likes bananas and so does she. So if it's in like just like, if the devil fruit's reincarnated in like a banana, but it's like a human-sized banana, as in like it's a banana that is meant for humans, then you give that to a giant, that is going to just be like so little tiny itty-bitty, like a pill or like a marble or something like that for them, depending on the size of the giant, for how big or for like how small the devil fruit is. And it could be a thing where, because like devil fruits don't rot. They don't rot until they are eaten. You can like leave a devil fruit somewhere, and as long as nobody eats it, it will just stay in like pristine condition for like who knows how long. And it could have been something where, like the king or the queen of the giants way back, Odin or whatever, way back during the Void Century, like they got their hands on this devil fruit that was supposed to be this, this like world-ending devil fruit or something like that, and like we can't let this ever fall into the hands of anybody who's outside of the island, because they will destroy us, and it will destroy everything, like Jormungandr, Fenrir fruit, whatever you want to go with. If you want to go down the mythological with the mythical zones, or if you want to go down like it's some type of amazingly powerful Paramecia or amazingly powerful Logia or something like that. Insert whatever you want to go with. And it's just this like amazing combination of powers. You get it and you eat it and you have the power to destroy the world. And what could have happened was like the king at the time got his hands on this fruit. And he's like, we have to keep this locked up. We have to keep this away so nobody else can use it. Because maybe it's part of the problem as to what ended the world. What made the that may have been the thing that like led to the defeat of like Joy Boy's forces, with like this devil fruit in the hands of the bad guys. And after Joy Boy's death and everything, they did manage to like defeat whoever had this devil fruit and kill them. And then the giants got their hands on the devil fruit and they're like, we have to keep this locked away. And they do so, and like they keep it locked away. Maybe it ends up getting like put into like a necklace as like a pendant, and like it's sealed so nobody can get into it. Or it's like as part of like a jewel on the crown, or part of a jewel on like a ring, or on like, it's a necklace or a bracelet, or maybe it's like it's hidden in the pommel of like the king's sword, or like the king's staff or something like that. Or there's like, it's like, I was going to say, it could be like a big thing where it's like blown out of proportion, where like they have this devil fruit and it is passed down from like parent, ruler to heir throughout the course of throughout the course of Elbath for the last, 800 years or whatever, since the Void Century. But what if it's this thing where it's like, oh, we're told that it's this devil fruit that is actually kept inside of like a chest inside of like kept inside of a chest inside of like the royal treasury or something like that, under strict lock and key, with like loyal guards protecting it all the time, and that only the king, only the ruler of the country has the key to unlock this devil fruit, this powerful, this chest that holds this amazing devil fruit. And what if it's actually like there's nothing in the devil fruit, there's nothing in the chest, it's just like in like the key is where the devil fruit is. It's like it's actually like inside of like a jewel or something like that on the key, like crystallized inside the key. And maybe it was someone someone killed Harold in the process of trying to get this key, thinking they could get to the devil fruit. And Loki, in an attempt to try to protect the devil fruit, maybe figured out that, oh, the devil fruit's actually in the key. So he may have been there, he may have tried to defend his father, may have tried to defend Harold. Harold still dies, Loki grabs the key so whoever the assailant was, can't get it. He runs to wherever the devil fruit chest is hidden, unlocks it, pretends to eat the devil fruit, keeps the key with him, like puts it on, hides it, so that way the other people don't know that he still actually has the devil fruit, and they just think that he ate the devil fruit. And he is now, they think, oh, you killed your father, you took this, you've done all this other stuff. We're just going to crucify you to this tree and keep you under guard. And Loki's like, well, I guess that's going to be like the safest place to keep this thing. And if I ever am released from here, someone's going to try to come and take this devil fruit from me. Type of a thing. And that could just be the case. Okay. I'm just about finished with this. Last bit. And I mean, this is not like unheard of when it comes to literature and stuff, where it's just like, okay, I'm watching something where they're going through and discussing Harry Potter chapter by chapter right now. It's called Through the Griffin Door by the Super Carlin Brothers. If you have any interest, there you go. And they're doing the scenes in the Shrinking Shack where Sirius and Remus are talking to Harry, Ron, and Hermione and trying to explain, that Scabbers is, Peter Pettigrew and everything. And Sirius could not be any more just vague with his answers. This is like, you're not being specific here. Just tell them that the rat is Peter. That they learned how to become animagus. Peter is the rat. That's what's going on here. You can have this explained so much quicker. And then you can let them ask their questions and you can explain them away. And then turn the rat back into the human sniveling little piece of crap that he is. Who betrayed his friends. And led to the deaths of Lily and James and everything. Where it's like all this other stuff where it's just like, Sirius could not be any more vague in his answers. He could not be like giving the worst possible answers at times before like Remus shows up and forces him to just like calm down. The kids deserve to know what's going on here. Type of thing. So it's like, it could just be where Loki is unfortunately giving like the wrong answers to a question. Technically a right answer, but it's not the way that you want to phrase it. In regards to, I am the sun god and I will destroy everything. If I'm released from here, I'll bring about the end of Elbath and everything else like that. Or it could just be bad turn of phrase in like Loki's case. Where it's just like, you could have phrased that better. And like, he gets, because like Sirius gets blamed for like Lily and James's death and everything like that because everybody thought he was the secret keeper. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't read Harry Potter in the last 20 something years. But, Loki could have, just again, he could have been, forced into this position. Someone else manipulated him, which is kind of funny when it's like Loki is, the god of mischief and everything else like that. He's the trickster god and someone else tricked him. And everything else. So it's like lots of that stuff is, kind of, what could be going on here. And that's pretty much what I had for this. I went a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's kind of the bits that I wanted to go over. It's like, why did Loki want Lola? Why was there this reason in the first place for him to be anywhere near Big Mom? Not that he couldn't have just like seen a picture of Lola somehow and just like fell in love with her that way. Or whatever, but you get the idea. So, one funny little bit of trivia that does connect back to the MCU for Loki is that for anyone who has watched Loki the series on Disney Plus for the first season, there's of course the time variant association and everything, and coincidentally, unless Oda planned this, which if he did, amazing, and if he didn't, complete coincidence and just luck on his part. The variant that the Loki that is the main Loki in Loki is given is 1130. And Loki has his full on first appearance in chapter 11,130. So I just found that hilarious and just, yeah. So that's what I have for this, for like Loki theories as to what could have happened. What will happen, we'll just have to wait and see. But this is kind of like what could have happened and everything. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.